Well, hey, everybody, and welcome to the Faith Together podcast. Lindsay here, joined with my friend Leon. Hi, Leon.
Hi, Lindsay.
Well, Leon, it's great to be together today and to continue on in this really important conversation all about screens and screen time safety.
Yes, I have learned so much from the research we've done on this.
Yes.
And in particular, I'm thankful for the book from Arlene Pelican.
Arlene Pelican, that is right. Yes.
That really has helped us in our thoughts about this.
Absolutely. I know a few things as I've been reading, Leon. I've been convicted myself for a few of my social media practices and trying to, take some time away from, I think my most addictive social media app is Instagram, because I just love watching the stories and all the videos, and you just get sucked in, Leon.
Well, that is probably one of the things that distinguishes us from our generations, the differences between you and I, because I'm still a Facebook person and I've really not gotten Instagram.
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of play with it a little occasionally because my students will say something and say, hey, you got to go look at that. And so I've got it on my phone, but I rarely look at it. I'm still a Facebook person, so that lets people know I'm kind of old.
Well, it's okay. And, I think everybody has different things on their phones that they're drawn to, whether it's sports apps. March Madness was a while ago, but I know that was a pull for a lot of people, just following their brackets and all that kind of thing, or whether it's just texting,
Yeah, and it really doesn't matter what that is. It's just the fact that it takes our attention, it takes our time, and we're learning that this isn't an evil thing, but we need to understand the impact that it has on us and our families, and then we need to take aggressive, maybe a proactive approach to determining how we're going to use it and when we're going to use it, and how much we're going to let it take time from our lives.
Yeah, I think that's a really good word, proactive, because if we're just reacting to social media, to our screens, even, YouTube and tablets and all those things, games, if we're just constantly reacting to it, we aren't finding good habits with it, because it will always win, right?
Yeah, and of course, this includes television as well. It's not just computer stuff, right? So just recognizing that we need to be in control instead of it controlling us.
Yeah. So a little bit of a recap of where we've been.
Yeah. So as I was kind of going through and preparing for today, I was looking through my book and I just kind of opened the cover and I wrote this note in here.
Oh.
So this was back in February when I first started reading the book, and I wrote this kind of to myself and dated it so it would just catch my attention. So this is what I said in the beginning of the book. I said, how ironic that while I am reading the intro of this book, my granddaughter is playing on her tablet.
Oh.
And we were visiting them at the time, and not that that's a bad thing, but I'm reading about some of the concerns of kids with their tablets, and there my granddaughter is on her tablet, which is fine. And in no way do I want to imply that my daughter is not managing their time. But it was just a recognition of how easy it is that's our first instinct. That's the first place we go. And I have kind of had, just kind of as a review of what we've been talking about, I am more aware when I'm with my grandkids now about this. I think I shared with you, we started buying these non-competitive board games.
Yeah, the cooperative board games.
Yeah, cooperative board games, yeah. And so I'm more aware than I was before of saying, hey, let's play a game, or hey, let's go outside, or hey, let's wrestle, or whatever the situation may be, to just say, okay, let's not be on the screens right now.
Right. Yeah. I have also been challenged over these last couple of weeks to back off of Instagram, of course, as I said, but also in real life, practical ways. Facebook, Instagram, even Marco Polo is an app that you do like video messaging back and forth. I've realized that texting, whatever it might be, people that are in our family that are far away, I find myself, I'll just text them that, or I'll just, send them a quick video message on that, or voice memo, or because we have it all at our fingertips and it makes things a lot quicker and easier and more efficient. But I've been reminded that a phone call, and actually taking time to talk with people, it means a lot.
Isn't it weird that we have phones, but we don't use them to talk to people?
Yeah, I know.
Who would have ever thought?
Yes, exactly. So I've just been really challenging myself. If that person's far away, give them just a phone call and have an actual conversation. And then also realizing that as much as we can have one-on-one good connection in person with people, it's really healthy to do. So that's been a good filter I've started to put onto just my everyday connections with others in my family and not in my family.
Yeah. And I think for me, going through this series has just made me aware of how many times I reach for my phone. I went out to breakfast with my wife recently, and I started to reach for my phone and thought, no, we're at breakfast. The phone stays in the pocket.
Right.
And so just things like that are really, really simple. I'm more aware of other people's use of phones, of my own use of phones. And maybe that's what this has been about for me, is just to be a little more aware.
Yeah, just to raise your level of awareness. I also had really good conversations these last couple Sundays with my team of leaders that love and serve kids. And we've talked about how important it is to have eye contact with kids and, really take initiative in those small group settings to just connect and have good conversation. And that kind of reminds me of our webinar coming up, the A+ social skills for kids, and how those are really important for them to learn right now, because it's not something that they have as much exposure to because of the level of technology they use and screens that they're on all the time at school, for school, and at home. So if you haven't signed up for our webinar, shameless plug there.
Since you brought that up, why don't you just give us a little more detail? We'll talk about it at the end of our podcast to remind people, but since we're there, why don't you just give us some little details there?
So we're going to be hosting a webinar called A+ Skills, the 5 skills every child needs in a tech-driven world. And this webinar is going to be on Thursday, May 2nd at 7 p.m. And we will be...
And that's Central Daylight Time, right?
Yes, Central Daylight Time. Yep. And we will be presenting Arlene Pellicane, the author of Screen Kids, the book we've been working through on the podcast here. She's going to be joining us, and we're going to be talking through these 5 A+ skills. So those 5 skills are affection, appreciation, anger management, apology, and attention.
Yeah, so the design is that it would be like an hour webinar, right?
Yep.
But we're going to hopefully leave like 15 to 20 minutes for questions that people can write in while the webinar is going on, and we'll ask those of Arlene toward the end.
Yes.
So it'll be very interactive from that perspective. And we're going to have some giveaways during the webinar.
We will have giveaways, and it's absolutely free. So
absolutely.
You can sign up on our website, centerff.com, and all the links will be shared with you so that you can jump on with us on Thursday, May 2nd. And if for some reason you can't join us at that time, you can still sign up, and the recording will be sent to you.
Yeah, for sure. And so today's topic is continuing with screen time and focusing on emotional health.
Yes.
And I have to admit to you, this is a hard topic for me. As I read, of all the chapters in the book, as I read this one, it just made my heart hurt.
Yeah.
Looking at the statistics and the emotional impact on kids and teenagers that screen time is having, that I think generally we just don't give a lot of thought about. That some of the things that we see as issues that our kids are dealing with, both emotionally and psychologically, may be in part a result of the impact of screen time.
Yeah, I agree with you. This was not an easy chapter to read, but it's an important one. And I'm so glad that we're going to dive into some of the things that we've learned, specifically around the research that's been done on this topic.
Yeah.
I think those statistics, you and I have talked about this, Leon, statistics aren't everything, but they definitely give you a picture of what's going on and help you to really see clearly the impacts of screen time with the emotional health.
Yeah. So let's start this conversation by rehashing something that we've said in an earlier podcast, and that is our intent here is not to be doom and gloom about technology.
Not at all.
Our attempt here is to make us aware of things that we may not be aware of so that we can take a proactive approach to how we're going to deal with it. And so let me just say up front that some of the things we're going to share today are a bit alarming. And we're going to do this in a bad news, good news format like we have the last two podcasts, right?
Yes. We're going to start with the bad news because we need to get that in front of us, and then we're going to end on a high note with the good news.
All right. So let's get started.
Knowledge is power. That's so true, Leon, that as we learn together, we will proactively be able to step into these conversations with our kids. So the very first thing that I thought was really interesting, Leon, in this chapter was there was a quote, I believe, that said, being with screens is a lot easier than being with people.
Yeah.
The author made the point of saying that, when you're on a screen, they don't care what you look like. They don't care how you're feeling. They, when you're with that screen, the screen, and if there's people interacting with you on it, you can kind of hide behind it, and you don't have to have those upfront conversations one-on-one. And so it brings us to the place of, so why do we go to screens first? Why do we replace those social connections? Why do kids do that? And they gave us some signs to be looking for, right, Leon?
Yeah, that's right. They did. So some of those signs include kind of withdrawing, kids being super quiet when they get home, not wanting to talk about what's going on in their lives, isolating themselves a bit. And one of the things that the book mentions, Lindsay, is this issue of cyberbullying.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. So I was really interested in this because this was a perspective I had not considered. So when kids are bullied, like on the playground, while that's a terrible thing, it is usually between the person that's doing the bullying and the person receiving the bullying. And it's usually for a shortened period of time until there's a change. So say like they're out on recess, one of the kids is being bullied. There may be a couple other kids that know about it, but that's going to stop when they go back into the classroom.
Right.
Right. And while that's terrible, should be reported, should be addressed, it has a kind of a beginning and an ending, at least in that moment. Cyberbullying is done publicly. It's done on Instagram, on Facebook, on social media, whatever that social media form is. And now it's made public to everybody, and it's not just for a moment, it lasts.
Right.
Right? And so cyberbullying is really an issue.
Right. And it's the photos, the cruel comments, whatever it might be, those things live on, and they're not limited to a physical location.
Right. And there's a sense of anonymity by the person doing the bullying, right? Mm-hmm. It's not like I'm doing it to you face to face. I'm doing it behind the screen. And so while you may know my name, I don't have to face you. Right. In that. And so I think we need to look at this from two perspectives. One, from the perspective of our child who may be bullied on screen, but also, and most of us don't want to think about this, is that our kids might be the one doing the bullying.
Right.
And so helping them to understand that we are responsible for the things that we put on social media. Wow, even as I'm saying that, I'm thinking, okay, is there an age limit that we even allow our kids on social media? Of course, every family has to make that decision, but I think the later the better on that.
I would agree.
On that front.
I would agree. And I think that's an important first conversation for parents to have when it comes to social media and screens in general, just coming to an agreement on what that age is for your kids and your family. I thought some of the survey stats on cyberbullying were interesting. Leon, it said that a national survey of 4,500 12 to 17-year-olds said this about cyberbullying. 34% had experienced it. 17% had experienced it in the last 30 days. 4 out of 5 of those cyberbullied said mean comments were posted. And 70% of those cyberbullied said someone spread rumors about them. And 64% of those cyberbullied said it really affected their ability to learn and feel safe at school. And I know that I've seen this happen for families, even in my own family with schools, that it might not be a good fit because of a bullying situation, but they go to a different school and it just follows them because the cyberbullying is living online.
Right. And again, that's the difference between it being online and being just face-to-face, right?
Right. And so anyways, I just thought that was interesting, those stats there. And it said that 12% admit they had cyberbullied others. And the most common behaviors were 60% spreading rumors, 58% posting mean comments, and 54% threatening to hurt someone.
Yeah. Those are pretty high numbers.
Yeah, they are. And so the book says this. I believe this to be true. And I'm just going to read it verbatim because I think she puts it so well. We cannot throw up our hands and say, I just don't understand the latest technology. We have to be aware of warning signs when a child is being cyberbullied.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so those warning signs they shared are exactly what you shared at the beginning of this conversation. Just any kind of increase or decrease in device use and emotional responses to what they are seeing on their devices that are out of the ordinary, paying close attention to those things.
Yeah, just a change in typical habits, patterns of their life. So all of a sudden, if they're a talkative child, all of a sudden they're not talking much. If they're a quiet child generally, and all of a sudden they're talking a lot, there's just lots of things like that parents can be aware of.
Hiding a device.
Yeah.
Will tell you something's
you come in the
up.
room and all of a sudden they're scrambling to get off whatever.
There's probably something going on there. Whether it's bullying on their end or they're being bullied, there's something to dive deeper into.
Or,
there.
of course, we haven't really talked about this, but just inappropriate things that they're
too.
running across, oftentimes innocently. And that's another reason why we need to pay close attention as parents.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Well, there were some statistics that they shared in the book that were alarming. I said at the beginning of this that this was a hard topic for me, and this is where some of that hard sense comes as I read through and looked at this. So they talked about clinical depression quite a bit, and the statistics that are associated with depression, and it seems its connection to screen time. So they said part of the anxiety comes from this sense of when I'm on social media that I have to brand myself.
Yeah.
So we've all heard about the fact that the people we know on social media and the way they present themselves probably isn't very accurate to who they really are as a person.
Yeah.
We see all the good stuff about who they are. And so there's this sense that I have to create an image that I want to portray to the rest of the world. And there's a sense of anxiety that comes with making sure I get on social media every day, making sure I'm making these posts that show what a wonderful life I have and all of these kinds of things, which has led to an increase in depression. And so one of the studies that was done by Johns Hopkins, a very respected hospital, that did a study on the rising rate of depression among youth. And from the years 2005 to 2014, so a 10-year period, there was a 37% increase in youth reported depression, which is pretty alarming. And it seems to correspond somewhat with the invention of both the iPhone and Facebook in particular. So here's some of the things that I found. So at this point, about 42% of 10-year-olds have their own iPhone. 42% of 10-year-olds, and about 91% of those starting at age 14.
Okay.
So that is a lot. And as you know, we can have all of these filters and things on our computers at home so that kids are protected from things that we don't want them to be exposed to. But a lot of that is not available for phones. Mm-hmm. And so kids can easily, it's secret. It's in my pocket. I can go into a room by myself, whatever it is, in secret. And so that's a pretty high percentage of our kids that have either iPhones or some kind of a phone device. And then, and I mentioned earlier that rise in depression of about 37% was kind of corresponding with iPhones and Facebook, but also with iPads. So in 2010, there were 2 million iPads available. And that was the first year that the iPad came out.
I remember that.
3 years later, it went from 2 million people having iPads to 33 million people having iPads 2 years later.
Wow.
And that 33 million each year just kept growing and growing and growing until this last year in 2023, 135 million iPads were sold in 2023.
Really?
135 million.
Staggering.
And that is a drop by 10% from 2022.
Okay. Oh, my goodness.
Isn't that crazy?
Okay, here's the thing, Leon. I remember in 2010 going into Best Buy, and I had been saving up for an iPad because I had heard all about them and how you could, I'm a reader, and I heard about how you could read books on these things and really was excited to go get it. And so thinking about the progression of that over these years, that's fascinating.
It really is.
Wow.
And one thing I wasn't able to find is how many of those 135 million sold last year are in the hands of kids.
Sure.
And teenagers. And I suspect that number is pretty high.
I would think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, again, this is not a negative assessment on iPads, iPhones, technology, all that stuff. We just need to be aware. So I think oftentimes our kids just go jump on their iPad or on their phone. We have no idea what they're looking at, and that's where we want to be aware.
Right. And I also think they say in the book that being on your phone or tablet ultimately leads to less of that face-to-face conversation or face-to-face time and meaningful conversation. And we're going to talk about more of this, spoiler alert, in the good news, that there is an antidote to these things that we can give our kids. And that face-to-face time and meaningful conversation is part of that. But it's just important for us to realize that while what starts out as an innocent, this is something that can be helpful to my everyday life and makes things easier, and wow, this is so great, it really does pull you away from those needed practices.
Yeah.
Yep. Another piece of research that I thought was really interesting was that not only is depression on the rise with screens, but also anxiety is on the rise.
Right.
And it said in the book that the Higher Education Research Institute at UCLA had been talking with incoming freshman college students.
Yep.
And when was that? That was in, since 1985, they've been talking with incoming freshmen. And in 1985, 18% replied with, they were given the question, do you feel overwhelmed with everything you have to do? And they replied in 1985, 18% replied yes. And then by 2000, that number climbed to 28%. And by 2016 to almost 41%.
Wow.
So I don't know where that is now in 2024.
Yeah.
But I'm sure it's, as a professor, Leon, wouldn't you say you would think it's higher?
So you and I both work with students.
Yes.
And it's this is like the number one thing. And one of the things that we have found is that a lot of this comes because of a lack of sleep in part.
Yes.
So that's connected to screen time.
Mm-hmm.
So in place of sleep, I'm finding comfort and I'm finding acceptance and I'm finding my needs being met by my screens.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's actually causing a lack of sleep. There's been lots of studies on this one, lack of sleep. And so now college students in particular, but not just college students, I would say this is high school students and children who are not monitored when it comes to their devices, are spending time. I mean, they're actually falling asleep with their screens in their hands.
Yep.
You probably know as well as I do that how easy it is for a half an hour to pass without realizing it because
Sure.
you've been on social media. I mean, it's just all of a sudden it's like, where did that half an hour go?
Yeah.
It sure didn't seem like that.
Right.
And so this is becoming a problem for college students because there's no monitoring of it. And
yeah, it's tough. And one of the things I thought was fascinating is you take these college freshmen that they'd been looking at, talking through in this study, and they shared that these college freshmen are 6 times more anxious than their great grandparents.
yeah.
Okay, Leon, that's not that long ago.
No. And
Great grandparents, it's only a couple generations.
Yeah. And their great grandparents are likely to have been like the generation that went to war.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So, okay. So let me see if I can get this straight. Our anxiety level today among college students is 6 times what it was for their great grandparents who served and dealt with World War II.
Right.
Okay, how is that even possible?
Right.
What more level of anxiety can you have than to have to be either a part of a war, serving in a war, or being the people at home waiting for those you love to come home?
Yeah. So it shows us how powerful these screens are on our emotional health.
Yeah.
Okay, I promise we're almost through the bad news,
Yeah,
Leon.
and
there's just a few more things we want to
it-
touch on.
Yeah, and this one's really bad.
Yeah, it is.
So these are statistics on suicide, and I hate to even bring this up, but we need to be aware, right?
Yeah.
So there has been a 56% increase from 2007 to 2017, in particular among teenagers, a 56% increase in suicide during that time. And for 10 to 14-year-olds, it has tripled in that time from what it was in 2007 to what it is in 2017. And of course, that information is 7 years old. So who knows what it is now.
Right.
So these statistics were things that were provided in the book. And one of the things I love about this book is they do great research. These are not just like some fly-by-night research,
Yeah.
that was done with 100 people and they make all these assessments about it. But these are serious research experiences.
Yes, absolutely. And a lot of the suicide tendencies come from a root in feeling alone and feeling isolated. And one of those pieces of research, I believe it was from the University of California, Berkeley, in the book, they shared that the more time teen girls spend on social media and smartphones, the more likely they are to be depressed and start exhibiting suicide-related behavior.